Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. On this channel, we talk about problems people face in their day-to-day life. Let's start with the video.
It is not uncommon for mothers-in-law to have unnecessary beef with their sons' wives. I'm not sure what it is about this being a tale as old as time, but I just know that I never expected to be the subject to it. My mother-in-law was so nice to me when my boyfriend and I started dating. She invited me over to her place all the time. She fed me their traditional food and took time carefully teaching me all the cooking secrets and reciting to me the inside family jokes and stories that they were sourced from. There were even times when I felt like we were more friends than we were related to me dating her son. She's the kind of woman that never skips gym day and carefully takes care of every detail in her morning as well as evening routine. She knows everything, talks about everything, and makes you interested in anything just based on the way she talks. She's really, really charming, and nobody can help but want her affection. I guess, in a way, this explains that all the comments I would always get from her about me looking too skinny or gaining too much weight or wearing too much or too little hygiene jokes. For some reason or the other, mommy issues, I never took them too seriously and would always laugh along and brush them off. But now that I know she never wanted me and her son to happen in the first place, makes everything feel so fake and deceptive. I always try to get her attention. I'm not gonna lie to you, I'm an affection-deprived person and someone who was rejected by my very own mother at a very young age. Doesn't really take away from anything, and especially not from the fact that I would trust her to be telling the truth or doing the right thing blindly. I literally would have trusted her with my life, and I'm so grateful she didn't ask me to do anything along those lines before she exposed to me just how cruel and manipulative of a person she actually is. One day when I was driving home from work, I got a phone call from my mother-in-law telling me to go to her house as soon and as fast as my car could drive. Honestly, I was terrified. I sped down the highway like it ain't nobody's business and got through with what was initially a 30-minute drive in barely 10 to 15. I hysterically knocked on her door, seeing as she hung up on me really abruptly, and I was more than ready to break it down however I found it possible. I even contemplated calling the cops as I was speeding down the highway. When I got to the house, I heard her scream, "The door is open!" And I walked in and found her on the couch, watching the remote. She very seriously asked me to please get her a glass of water and turn off the light. As anticlimactic as that was, I saw a look of psychoticness and chaos in her eyes that genuinely terrified me into submission. I got the water, turned off the light, and walked out of there in absolute shock. She was never the kind of person to pull off jokes, and never one for pranks or unseriousness, and even her tone of speech that day was nothing remote to a joke. I was terrified. I literally remember getting into my car, calling my then fiancé, and breaking the F down. It was at a time in my life when I was going through a lot, and her pulling whatever the F rush and then plunge of adrenaline that was pushed me off the brink of collectiveness. That was a started point. That was a few months back, and everything about my relationship with her changed ever since. She's no longer the warm, caring, and loving woman that I always loved to hang around, but my feelings of wanting to be accepting and loved by her never went away, which left me in this really awkward position where I didn't know if it was the time to cut her off or if she herself was going through something that I would be considered a hero in her eyes for helping her through and sticking by her side. Looking back at things now that I've broken off my engagement to my high school sweetheart because of her, I also have a psych degree, which means that when I look back at things and see the way she was treating me and the way I was reacting to her manipulation, I can professionally and safely say that it was a textbook version of somebody with a borderline narcissistic pattern of behavior, stumbling across someone who's emotionally vulnerable and impressionable and suffered from the absence of a safe and strong support system. I was a perfect victim for her, and she knew exactly what to do with it. It was truly disgusting. After that incident, she would go for days upon days of not calling, contacting or requesting a word from me. And then she would call me all in awe and love and care and ask me to do a favor for her. Go do something on her behalf that wouldn't actually derail anything in her life, but the time I was spending actually doing her shiz was jeopardizing my position at the company that I was working at, which was already struggling. And because of the hot and cold manipulative technique and how good she had gotten at mastering it, it would work on me every single effing time. I knew she was manipulating me, and I would feel the closest thing possible to post-nut clarity after catering to her requests, but I still did everything for her. She's a monster, and I'm sorry for going on a rant about it, but it really damaged me, and it's going to take me a long-ass time to heal myself before I learn to heal other people. But at least one thing about her is that she's not a liar. She's not the type that would shy away from telling you the most cruel of things. She was ruthless, and she would do what it takes, when it takes, no matter who it ruins. That's basically the logic she put behind breaking apart the relationship my fiancé and I had, who, unlike her, isn't all that fond of the idea of absolute honesty. It would be a bit difficult to believe that someone that hid their secret child from me for all of our relationship and never even mentioned anything about knocking anybody up for over 6 years. He lied to me times and times again about the reason why he didn't want to get the law involved in our marriage. Let me explain that first. Initially, we weren't going to get married. Both of us grew up in what can only be considered as disasters for marriages, and neither one of us fancied the idea of being legally and religiously tied to one another when the relationship should be independent from all of that. But as time passed and we started losing that craze of we don't give an F what everybody else thinks, we entertained the idea more and more until one day he propositioned that we get married, but without getting any legalities involved. I kind of saw his point of view because at the end of the day, should the relationship ever end or anything, it would just be a whole other mess to deal with, and once again, neither one of us saw marriage to be all too holistic or sacred. That was his reasoning, that he didn't want the legal burdens, not that he didn't want me to see his son's name enlisted as his offspring under his name in the House of Law. The way I came to know was over text. Literally, my mother-in-law texted me in the middle of the night saying that she had come across an email in my fiancé's mailbox saying that his lawyer was reminding him of needing to pay for child support or something along those lines. She told me that she had found out a week prior to telling me and had only taken the time to think of a good way to bomb me with this information, which now that I look back on it, first of all, what the F was she doing scrolling through my fiancé's emails? And it took her a whole ass week to figure out the worst way humanly possible to drop terrible news on people. That's straight up just cap, because that woman is the smartest human being I have ever had the displeasure of interacting with. Update. Obviously, I broke up with him and I went to her house and smacked the shiz out of her for being such a dick to me the whole time. And then yes, I did go to the baby mama and tell her that we were going to get married, and she told me that she had no idea he was in another relationship, let alone about to get married to someone. Apparently, he had been going to her house to spend time with a kid, and they had gotten a bit too spicy a bunch of times. But that's only because he told her that he was single, and she swore up and down that she had no idea I even existed, let alone carried around the ring that he promised me loyalty through. It was a lot to unpack, actually, and I'm really still dealing with the aftermath of this situation. So for those of you who aren't attacking me for being easily manipulated by mother-in-law when I was around her, thank you for understanding and for all your support. I really do appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. Not the a-hole. What kind of monster sees someone behaving based on being in an emotional state of distress and still finds it in themselves to point fingers and blame them for other people being little dicks? Once again, not the a-hole. The only thing I have to say is I hope you left a dozen bruises here and there because God knows I would have broken a bone or two if I was in your shoes. Not the a-hole. Although not sure what you went and beat up the mother-in-law when the fiancé is the one that should have gotten a couple of ribs switched apart. What kind of asshole dick is this man? And honestly, I have nothing to say about you because you are clearly not doing well, and I'm sorry to hear that all of this happened to you. Not the a-hole. Okay, but what was a torture method that you used on the fiancé? I'd love to know. And if you haven't tortured him yet, Please let me know so I can give you all sorts of inspos and help out with the creative side of making him pay for all that he put you through and watch you choke down because of. Here's the next story. I-30F had my daughter 3 months ago. My husband and I decided before she was born that we weren't going to post pictures of her on our social media, and we asked our extended family to abide by this as well, because our daughter is so young and there is a pandemonium going on right now. Neither mine nor my husband's family have gotten to meet our daughter in person. There have been FaceTime calls with them, and pretty soon they will be able to meet her in person, but for now it's just been pictures. Because we have so many family members who wanted photos, I made a private album on FB to allow them to see the pictures whenever they want. But I reminded everyone that again we didn't want photos posted online. Everyone seemed to respect that until one day I found my mother-in-law had posted the pics from the album on her timeline. I messaged her and asked her to take them down, but she said no because she wanted to be able to share the pictures with her friends, and it was insane of me to completely restrict sharing any photos online. I told her I would be happy to get the photos physically made for her, but that it's very important to us to maintain our daughter's privacy. I understand people post pics of their kids all the time, but personally, people aren't entitled to photos of my child just like they aren't entitled to know anything else about my life. I choose what to share, and I also want to respect my daughter's right to a private life. When she is older, she will be free to make her own choice on the subject, and of course, we are still going to take plenty of photos of her, but they will remain private for us and our family. Because my mother-in-law refused to take down the photos, I have since taken down the album entirely, because even though I restricted her access, she was still getting photos from other family members who had access and continuing to post them. My husband has been in contact with his parents telling them to stop, but they still feel they have the right to do it. And other family members on his side have said we are blowing this way out of proportion. I have stopped sending photos to my mother-in-law and father-in-law even when they requested privately now, because I don't trust them not to post them. I just don't understand what is so hard about respecting our wants as her parents. Not the a-hole, and this makes me so mad. Congrats on your sweet babe, by the way. We also have a new 4-month-old and have the same social media rules. If she grows up and decides she wants to be an ass model on Instagram, I guess I'd deal with it, but until she's old enough and can consent, I don't want her face all over social media. Not to mention that a lot of boomers are so reckless on freaking Facebook. So it was a hard no for me with my parents and in-laws. They all got on board a little fuss, but we didn't give a shiz. Not the a-hole. I'd also report the post to FB and tell them that this is a photo of your child that the individual does not have the right to post, and they need to remove her posts containing any pictures of your child. Provide them links. Their entitlement is disgusting. She's not respecting your right to parent your baby in the way you wish, and if not stopped in her tracks now, will run over you in other areas regarding your child as the baby grows. Talk to your husband and make sure he shuts this behavior down now so they understand that any disregard of your parenting wishes will never be tolerated. Their grandparent right do not in any way overrule your rights as your child's parents. Not the a-hole. My ex-wife used to overshare every moment of our lives on Facebook. And my stepdaughter was absolutely furious that her life was made public for absolute strangers. Even as a preteen, she would beg her mom not to share her photos online, and her mom would completely dismiss her concerns. It invalidated her feelings, betrayed her privacy, and to this day, she has very little trust in her mom to be private and discreet. In your situation, not respecting the privacy of a 4-month-old and your request as a parent is no different than betraying the trust of a 14 or 40-year-old. These small deeds say big things about a person's lack of character. As much as it sucks, stop sharing photos altogether. When one person doesn't play as part of the team, everyone loses. Next story. My 24F boyfriend Jake, 27M, and I live together with my son Carter, 2M. We've been together about 1.5 years. They bond great, and I love watching their relationship grow. They go on a lot of adventures together, and all I ask is that I get a heads up if they're going to be gone long or far away, and that he answers his phone when I call. I know that sounds controlling, and yes, I do trust Jake with my life, But when Carter was 7 months, Jake and I had been dating a few weeks at that point, his biological father came for a visit and never brought him back. He doesn't have any custodial rights, and he's not even signed on the birth certificate. We set up visits ourselves to be cordial and never had a problem until that day. It took 2 weeks for the police to track him down and get my baby back. It really traumatized me. I honestly thought I would never see my baby again. Ever since then, I've been very protective. Even when my mom or my sister babysits, I call them constantly. Since Jake was in my life when that happened, he's usually very careful about respecting my rules. But last week, there was a carnival a few cities away, about 2-hour drive, and Jake took Carter to it without me knowing. When I came home and no one was there, I assumed they went to the store and didn't worry. After an hour, I called and no answer. After about 3 hours of no answered calls or texts, I'm shaking and crying, and no one else knew where they were when I called around. I was on the phone with the police when they walked in. I screamed, "What the F is wrong with you?" at Jake and grabbed Carter and locked myself in the bedroom. I cried all night. Jake doesn't get why I'm upset. My parents think I'm overreacting. My family thinks I'm overreacting and says it's not like they went out of the country. I understand I shouldn't have yelled or cursed at him, but I feel like my feelings are valid and are being minimized. I tried telling Jake I'm not angry with him for spending time with Carter, more so the fact that I couldn't get in touch with him and no one knew where he was. But now he's being petty and loudly announces when they leave, like, "We're going to the store, don't call the SWAT team." I apologize for speaking disrespectfully, but I don't think I have to apologize for that entire incident basically being a trigger for me. Edit to add info. I am in weekly therapy. I usually never blow up like that, but I was so worked up. Also, to clarify, when I meant I called my family constantly, I meant on a constant basis. Like if he's been there for a few hours, I call to check. I don't wait by the phone redialing, lol. But thank you for everyone for the insight so far. I'm trying to reply as much as I can. Not the a-hole. Our kids are tweens, and I always text my husband when we go out, unless it's just to drive through somewhere and come right back, or to run an errand. I can't imagine even thinking I could take off with him for a whole day without him knowing where we are. Your boyfriend isn't even your kid's parent, or even your fiancé. He didn't even pick up the phone. That's shocking. I would be livid. And the fact that he's now making fun of you for it is worrying. It's like he thinks he has just as much right or more to your child than you have, and or he likes seeing you upset and thinks it's funny.